I thought she was going to try to join us in this session, but I really haven't had much of a chance to talk to her lately. So I'm not sure. The Hangout on Air is live. So they have a new, Hangouts on Air is going away August 1st.
No.
For quick streaming, try youtube.com webcam. Really? I'm so tired of them changing stuff. youtube.com webcam. Wow. So that's going to interrupt our session 12.
Oh, man.
So, Leonie, I guess we're going to have to learn youtube.com webcam. Hangouts goes away August 1st. Wow. Oh.
That is totally
I thought it was bad enough. Yeah, I mean they've shut down Google Plus and where Hangouts used to be, just an independent thing under Google. It then got merged into YouTube. So I guess this is the next iteration of just obliterating Hangouts, and hopefully it will operate pretty much the same, but you never know.
so disappointing.
We've been reading the book of NightWomen as we've been traveling all over the world. Where'd you go, Leonie? You were the one I think that had a lot of places to go.
Yeah, I went to a bunch of places. I was in Poland, Germany, Czech Republic, Austria, England.
Wow.
Wow.
Oh.
What was your favorite?
So the thing is, because I don't travel, like I don't vacation, like I don't do touristy stuff.
Oh, okay.
So I was just moving from community to community. I have, the Europe trip was really rough for all kinds of reasons, and it's had a big impact on my life for the better, but it means big changes. But I think the place that I was most relaxed and felt most nourished was in England with my friends there. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And then I kind of needed to recover when I came back. So I went to like a bunch of different retreats when I came back. And along the Pacific Northwest coast.
Oh my goodness. You must be really tired. That's a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, and Gio, you were in Italy?
Yeah, Italy, and I got a chance to see Slovenia too. So that was beautiful. That was like, yeah, The Sound of Music. If you remember the movie.
Really?
It was so clean.
Okay.
And even McDonald's, I never thought fast food could be good. But they're trying to kill us over here, okay? I don't know what they're putting in our food, but it's not real. You go to a McDonald's in Italy or Slovenia, it tastes like real food. Oh my God, you're eating a steak on a bun with vegetables.
Oh,
wow. Why are they trying to kill Americans? This is not fair.
Sure.
You know, they say that it's a very high percentage of fast food restaurants are in minority communities. So the people they're trying to kill are minorities.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
But that's not the look overseas. Because they're like in the middle of regular shopping there, and people, they love, and it's geared toward the taste of the community. So you can find like some weird combinations like shrimp on a hamburger. I'm like, okay.
Wow.
And they have
Wow.
different kind of condiments, and you won't find like the apple pie, the regular desserts. It'll be something else. It'll be something different, or weird. Like, okay, I'm not eating that, but okay. And
Wow.
they
Well,
serve
the
alcohol.
McDonald's
They serve alcohol. Yeah,
alcohol.
yes, yes, they
What?
do. You can get a beer at McDonald's.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
So,
That's
Oh,
amazing.
no.
The McDonald's here has promotion lately of offering like a list of 4 or 5 or 6 different favorite items from McDonald's around the
That's
world.
right. That's right.
But
oh,
I haven't seen any steak on a bun or beef or shrimp.
okay.
That is so even in the promotion, we're still getting the short end of the
That's,
stick.
that's so unfair. That's so good. Oh no.
Wow.
Hey, Nicole.
Wow. How are you?
Hi, Nicole.
Nicole? You're muted.
Oh, we can't hear
Uh-oh.
you.
I can't hear you. Oh.
No.
Oh,
She's not muted.
If
Her
you
sound is
try
not working.
that, if you try that tools icon, the middle of the screen, the tools icon, and then look at the settings for the microphone and speaker, and maybe see if you have more than one and can try a different one. Sometimes I have to go through that.
Can you hear me now?
Second,
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
That's great.
yeah.
Okay, that's what it was. Hang on, you all. I'm trying to. I think. Oh, my chair. I don't have my chair. The chair I've been using, so purport.
Okay.
See, there's an issue, so I'm gonna put another book under. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
All right. So we'll get started.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Did you want to start, Michelle, or do I just jump in? Did you want to say something, Michelle?
Are you going to do the welcome?
Oh, you can do that.
Not okay.
Huh? Oh, thank you.
Okay. Welcome everyone to the Global Black Feminist Reading Circle. We are tonight beginning session 12, meaning this 12th book that we are reading together as a group. We've been off the air for several months, actually this whole year. But in the early part of the year, we privately read a book together. That's not a part of this session 12 number count. But what did we read? Ruth King, Healing Rage.
That's right.
Right. So we did that for a few months, and then we took a break for a few months. So this is actually the first public session that we are having for 2019. And so we run through October 29th. You heard when I first went live tonight, there was a notice saying that Hangouts on air is going to become defunct on August 1st. And they're developing something or have something called youtube.com webcam. So I'm going to need to learn the story with that, and I guess we'll have to make the migration during the middle of section 12. But currently, you can find links to watch our live videos and archives of our videos going back over the 12 books at the Global Black Feminists YouTube page. And we also have a Facebook page that's got a lot of stuff on it too. And my name's Michelle Odom. I'm located in New York City, and I'm very happy to see everyone that I haven't seen in so long. Welcome back. And tonight, let's move to Kim.
Hi, everybody.
Kim is tonight's facilitator.
I'm Kim Brandon, and I'm in
Hi,
New York.
Kim.
Hi, everybody. If we could just go around and everybody could introduce themselves. I'll start with Gio.
Hey, I'm Georgette Moses, and I'm coming to you guys from Columbia, South Carolina.
Yes. And Leonie.
Hello, everybody. I'm Leonie, and I'm joining you from Vancouver, British Columbia.
Oh, yes. And Nicole.
Hi, everyone. I'm joining from Houston, Texas today. Glad to be here.
All right. Welcome, Nicole.
Here's my book. Okay.
Yeah, the Book of NightWomen. I don't think I said the name of the book. The Book of NightWomen by Marlon James is our focus for session 12. Marlon James, I'm guessing because, you don't want to assume anything these days. But my guess would be that Marlon James identifies as a man. And so it seems that a man has written a book on the NightWomen. So we'll have to see how we feel about that as we go along.
Yes, that's a good point, Michelle. Okay, so.
Well, he is partial to skirt wearing.
Oh, okay.
He has said.
He has said
that right?
Yes.
No matter how I try to get with the new program.
All right, Marlon.
Right
Okay. I don't know where to go with that. But I did create a summary of the first two chapters. I kind of combined the two. So we can start there. And there's a quote from the back of the book. I kind of took half of that to get us started. The Book of NightWomen is the story of Lilith. And that, am I pronouncing that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Born into slavery on a Jamaican sugar plantation at the end of the 18th century. Even at her birth, the slave women around her recognized the dark power that they and she would come to both revere and fear. Lilith is born in blood, black as midnight, green eyes, and covered in her dying mother's blood. Two things you should know if you want to know her. As soon as Lilith born, the woman regard her with the fear and trembling because of them green eyes. They light up the room, but not like sunlight. Lilith is given to, Circe?
Mm-hmm.
Circe to raise. Only Circe has no warmth of feeling for children. She does not feed Lilith or give her any motherly comforts. Lilith eats from any leftovers from Circe's pot. The only attention paid to the young girl as she develops is not to be with a boy. And how do you say this name?
Oh, Tantalus, right?
Tantalus? Tantalus is given to Circe as a husband, only he learned the hard way not to climb in Circe's bed. When Tantalus goes completely out of his mind with the help of being beat by Circe and castrated earlier on, he is naked and tied to a tree like a wild animal for all to see. Songs are sung about Tantalus, and the women talk about Circe when washing clothes at the watering hole. Lilith fears that her name will be added to a new verse of the songs on everyone's lips. Lilith is a little spitfire, which can get an enslaved girl beaten or worse. When she turns 14, she gets her first period and is ordered to work in the sugar fields. This Master Jack informs Circe while he is in her bed. Lilith gets sick with marsh fever the next morning and is given Circe tea to drink. I'm sorry, she's given, how do you pronounce this tea? I'm sorry.
I don't. That's fine. I don't know. Does anybody know Sarah C?
Cersei.
Yeah,
Circe
that's what we
puts
call it.
no, these names are killing me. Circe puts on her dress and shoes, which most enslaved women don't have, and leaves. The newly hired Johnny Jumper Paris wants to take advantage of Circe being away and rape Lilith. He didn't count on Lilith's fast thinking, and he is burned with burning hot Circe tea. The tea melts the skin right off his face. Still, as he is screaming, he grabs Lilith. Circe returns home to a horrific scene. Paris killed, and is Lilith's green eyes in the darkened room that gives Circe, Homer, and the other women a chill. Swiftly the body is handled, and Homer places Lilith in the root cellar at the master's main house until they can plan what to do with her. Master Jack realizes that 2 enslaved bodies are missing, and Homer didn't keep him aware of it. Things get ugly for Homer, and with some fast thinking, Lilith confirms that she was working in the big house for 4 days, that she was not in fact missing. Homer says, when puss catch bird. I love the poetry in the verse, but can't stop feeling like Homer is right, and Marlon James is about to take us on a devastatingly beautiful tale about power without mercy. So that is the summary, and then we have 9 questions. And so would someone like to read the first question? And if we could, I think we'll try to get to all the questions, but if we don't, that's fine. And maybe we'll try to have shorter answers with some of these, but if you can and you just something's on your heart, just say what it is. So does anybody want to read the first question?
I can
I'll
read
read
it. Okay, go ahead, Michelle.
The line between farm animal and human beings keeps getting blurred under the system of slavery. Where in the text do you see it shown? Well, so for me, one example is you know how Homer, she's doing it to protect Lilith, but how she puts her down in the cellar, tells her to in the dark, tells her to piss and shit in a can on the floor. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Anybody else? I think for me, when you see Tantalus tied to that tree, he's mentally ill, and there he is, butt naked, for all to see. and he is castrated, that he's dismembered, and he's naked, and he's tied to the tree for all to see, girls, young women, everybody. It just feels like his humanity is stripped completely.
And I mean, yeah, that's the nature of chattel slavery, right? You know,
That's right.
not even defined as being human beings.
That's right. Okay, so we'll move on to the next question. Would someone like to read that one?
I can read it.
Oh, thank you.
Quote, every day enslaved life is a day that color red, end quote. Do you think you will see any of the happy slaves written about in history books of this story? So the answer to that question is no. I like the question though, because I was thinking about one of the ways why that is so. And I think that one, in Jamaica, no one's really trying to talk about slavery. Like there's been a lot of, where you have lots of monuments to slavery in the United States. Most of that stuff, because of rebellion, was burnt down or knocked down. So there's very little held memory about what that is, and it's actually been erased, so that people take on history of like English history as their history, kind of like thing. And I think that like in the United States, the focus is on reforming the stories from the white perspectives. So, that the treatment of slaves wasn't that bad, that they had jobs, etc., that they were somehow in relationship to white folks. It's about, sorry?
Immigrants.
Yes, that kind, yeah, exactly. And so in the United States, it feels like the focus is on reforming those stories from the white perspective. And it's actually done in a way to further alienate Black people because it wasn't so bad. And look how they act. So to support actually more dehumanization of Black folks, you tell the story of enslavement in the United States in such a way that doesn't seem that bad.
Yeah, I was also thinking through like how befitting it is for us to kind of be dipping in and out of controversy here with this text for many reasons, but obviously I'm thinking about the rhetoric of political rhetoric, if you will, what some are now calling American Descendants of Slavery, ADOS. And it is necessarily a way to fracture diaspora and any kind of, Pan-African nationalism or Pan-Africanist beliefs or tenets. And so I was thinking through that lens with that rhetoric reemerging. What does it do in this moment in time, in the current history, political history, which is all connected, but I was just thinking through what is it doing for me reading this text while you have this growing, if you will, movement. And I'm not saying it's a unified movement, but it's certainly growing where you have Black people saying, no, we are they're the American descendants of slavery who need to be compensated. And then they don't want Blacks from the diaspora to receive this compensation. So it's just interesting for me that we're reading this book and we're getting a kind of another glimpse here, all the while this rhetoric is growing.
Right, right.
Thank you.
Wow. One thing for me, Kim, in response to that question, just because I was quickly skimming through chapter 2, just before we got started, and there's that passage where Lilith is now in the cellar, and she doesn't know where she is, and she has never been exposed to the big house before, and she hears the other slaves in the kitchen, and they're laughing and joking, and Lilith has never heard laughter. And she's kind of thinking to herself, well, maybe maybe life in the big house is not so bad. Yeah.
I was also thinking through the cellar moment and connecting that to incidents in the life of a slave girl. The notion of the loophole of retreat, because she also Brent also fights off her would-be victimizer, and devises this scheme, really is devised to hide her person so she's not sexually assaulted. Um, so it's very interesting. But yeah, there's like really no protection. And I'm thinking through, the mythology, the names, what the names mean here in the text. And so it's also telling that, Kim, this is definitely not going to be that happy-go-lucky, happy darky slave narrative. Would you all consider this what they are sometimes calling a neo slave narrative? Do you consider it a slave narrative? What are you defining it that way?
A neo-slave? I don't know that term.
Well,
You're the scholar in the group, Nicole. So
well, it's interesting because when you kind of look at some of the fictionalized accounts, folks, there's this question like, is it a slave narrative? Could we describe it as a slave narrative? And also that there's always, the truth in this fiction, especially it's kind of historical kind of fiction. So I was just wondering, I noticed, Kim, you said slave story. And I think I was just wondering, like, was that a specific, like, rhetorical move? Did you not want to say slave narrative? I think that's where I was kind of going.
No, I think you're right. I think the terminology should have been slave narrative.
So I would definitely say it is a neo-slave narrative, because I think, as I described when I mentioned at first why I want to read this book is a book that started me off in being more curious about what it means to come as a formerly enslaved person from the West Indies and Jamaica in particular. Because when I came across this book, I became interested in it because I heard Marlon James talk about the amount of research that he did for it. And so this is a telling of a story that is based steeply in scholarly works. So in works like the Trevor Burney book about mastery, tyranny, and desire, or whatever, reading the journals of a man named Thistlewood, who was known to be incredibly depraved towards his slaves in Jamaica. So for me, why this book landed so strongly in me as such an important book, and it absolutely changed how it is that I came to see myself, is because in reading and watching stories of African Americans from formerly enslaved, there was always a piece of me that was just like, this is not mine. Like, this is not wholly mine. And so this was the first book that I read that helped me to actually understand the culture that my family comes from. Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hmm. Well, I just wanted to say that when I read that passage, every day in the life of a slave, every day in slave life is a day that color red. Just the phrasing of it made me think of, okay, red as in blood, as in pain, as in violence, and rhetorically, red as in a red letter day, especially noteworthy, if not pleasant, because it probably was never pleasant. So that's what I thought when I read that. But yeah, and it was ominous, an ominous clue to the rest of the story, the
Yeah.
rest of the narrative, how it's going to be. It's not going to be cute. Okay, not going to have a happy ending.
Yeah.
And I think as a slave, you're going to bleed because I think that they need to see that you're suffering. And the one way that you can see that you have disciplined a slave is to see the blood.
Mm,
So whether it's the whip or the axe or the what have you, you just keep hearing about people maimed as a form of punishment. And it said that
mhm,
it's more important to discipline than to protect your property. If the enslaved person is your property, there's an evil that just kind of says, I'm going to beat you until I'm exhausted. I'm going to hurt you until I'm exhausted. I'm going to find the next level of cruelty. So I think right before this, they were just talking about all the different devices that will cause you to bleed.
Yeah. Can I also just note that, like, actually, this is a question, because what I'm realizing is that these neo-slave narratives that I have read, the ones that come from British colonialism, women are always at the center of the story. And I find that to be different than the African American slave narratives. So I don't know if it's just because I haven't come across the right, like, I think it's something like Roots, where it's like there is a male narrative at the center of that. But if I think of this book and like The Long Song by Andrea Levy and other books from people who come from the Caribbean, it's almost, I mean, I don't even know if there is a book that I can think of in which a man's at the center of the story, which I think
Me.
is really, sorry?
Oh, go ahead.
No, I just think it's interesting
What
because,
about Beloved?
yeah, so there you go. But like Beloved is like the book that I would name as that. And I don't know. For me, I'm curious about that because um, the society, so Jamaican culture and Caribbean culture is very matriarchal, and I see that as stemming directly from enslavement. So I guess it's a, yeah. I mean, are there others besides Beloved? I mean, I don't know. I'm really asking.
Yeah, I have far more experience because I like to read um, biography, autobiography, and so forth. So I definitely have far more experience with those um, slave narratives. But um, so I know that that is how Black American women kind of got into, in many ways. I mean, we can look historically at folks like, well, Phyllis Wheatley, who's just exceptional.
Yeah.
Um, but um, but I'm thinking of other Black women whose slave their narratives are published and classified as slave narratives. And one of the major differences is that um, the scholar Ursula Orr talks about, lynching, the equivalent to lynching a black man was raping a black woman. So what I noticed in a lot of those slave narratives is this kind of, I don't want to necessarily say deliberate, a way that that a lot of those black women writers were showing and proving that they were not sexually violated, or that they were witty enough, or just smart enough to um, to outthink others, or to do something that would prevent that. So the sexual exploitation, I don't see it, in that regard. And this is fictionalized account. So I'm just like, even though it's research as beloved, it's research, but it's still, fictionalized. So I'm just thinking through, like, well, I guess, what Sadia Hartman calls it, to critical fabulation, that we have to fill in the gaps as to what happened, because a lot of times the archives don't give it all to us. And there are gaps in the archive. There's grief in the archive. There's erasure, in the archive. So, so it's really interesting to read it this way. It's so compelling for me to be reading about a 14-year-old girl, and my daughters will be 13 in a couple of months. It's just, but it's no different from other narratives that I've read. It's just, I don't know. It's just, I don't know why this is like really intriguing for me. No different in that regard, that they were still young girls, I would say, right? But for some odd reason, this is just, I don't know. It's taking my breath away, really.
Yeah. Thank you. One more thing and then I'll stop.
Before you say that, there are the Schomburg says there are 6 slave narratives based on American women that they are in their collection. So I like the idea of us posing questions, and that could be our homework to kind of see, because I never thought to look at this way. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you, Leonie. Go right ahead.
Yeah. So I so appreciate the research in this, and like, because even a line like that, there was, so this is a big plantation, right? Like Jamaica's the biggest of the Caribbean islands. It's and this is a big plantation on that island, hundreds of slaves, and one child is born in that year. And what it reminds me of is that what we know is that in Jamaica, the conditions were so harsh that infertility was a big problem.
Really?
So this is why, yes, this is why slave owners in the West, in America, if you're a slave owner, you can get rich by having more and more slaves be born. You can get rich just off of slaves. You don't have to grow a thing. You don't have to farm a thing. Nothing. In the West Indies, and in Jamaica in particular, with the sugarcane business, you could not. You kept having to bring people in because they were working such long hours in heat. Sugarcane is still hard work. It hasn't benefited from machines at all. And one of the results of that was that people died. The death rate was incredibly high, unlike in the United States, and fertility was incredibly low, unlike in the United States. So even like a line like that, it's just so much there to unpack if you just know a little bit of the history. That's all.
Wow.
Yeah, well, that actually, Leonie, is, why I have told you guys that my preference really is for fiction works, because, my impression is that most of us, certainly in the country, don't know enough of our history to, have a clue, as we're reading a historical novel, what pieces might actually, be based on truth and what are pure fantasy. So to me, when you start with a grounding in nonfiction and then, find something complementary that's historical fiction,
Mm.
you're really giving yourself a better opportunity for learning.
Yeah, yeah,
But it's, I love the book. Of course, I've read the whole book. I love the book. It's not that. It's just that my concern in doing this work at all of the book group is that there are serious deficiencies in American knowledge of history. We wouldn't be in the position that we're in right now in national politics if more Americans were grounded in the truth of history. But there's actually a concerted effort to make sure that we're not,
yeah,
and it's
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, even the absence of like Black scholarly works, like, most of the stuff that I know about Jamaican his enslavement in Jamaica comes from white scholars.
yeah,
And you're starting to see more and more people who are not necessarily Jamaican born or from the Caribbean, but from that background. So someone like
yeah,
David Olusoga, who is not even like from the West Indies, his Olusoga, as you can tell from the name, is Nigerian, but like starting to have that lens there. And some of the white scholarly works are quite good. They don't put their gaze on it. It's just straight up microhistory reporting or
that's
whatever.
right,
But
right,
it's so important to, I think, when we are looking at these fiction works, yeah, to be curious about um, where is the how they're being backed up, how they laminate with what actually has happened in history, because we don't, because erasure is part of the reason, is part of
right,
anti-blackness, right? So
right,
you talked about
right,
what Americans don't know, and it's what most Black
right.
people don't know, because your ignorance is part of the
And
narrative.
what most
Yeah,
white people don't know, it's
yeah,
it's
yeah,
just it's just a really big problem.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Thank you for indulging me.
And also the Book of Negroes comes to mind,
Yeah,
Leonie.
yeah. Another well-researched um, book. Um, yeah,
Wow. Okay, so let's move on. I guess we're up to question 3.
yeah.
Uh,
Who would like to read
uh-huh.
that one?
Oh, I'll read that for you.
Oh, thank you.
Master Jack sets Cersei up for what looks like a free ride on the plantation. But is it really? Well, hmm. On
No.
the surface, and probably to the field workers, I'm using worker in a very liberal sense, and the house workers, she doesn't have to do anything but lay on her back and then do whatever she's asked to do. But, she's still a cage bird. She's still a slave. And even though she puts on a dress and shoes and she goes where she needs to go, she's still a slave. And if she falls out of favor with Master Jack, she gone. Okay. And yeah, so it's not I mean, unless you really like being a prostitute and not getting paid, uh it can't be, you know, something that makes you feel good about yourself. It's just your role, right? And it's better than being out in the fields working. And it's better than being in the kitchen and being spit on and beat up because you dropped a cup of tea or something. She has some kind of power or a little semi prestige because the rest of the people are kind of scared of her because she has some favor with Master Jack. And the name, and I was curious about the names that he's giving his characters. And so, Cersei in Greek mythology is the chick who turned people into animals, swine and werewolves and what have you.
Oh.
So,
Oh, I didn't
she
know
had,
that.
yeah, yeah. So, I would be curious to know, on the side note, why he picked her name to be Cersei, why he picked Lilith to be Lilith. And Tantalus, well, that kind of, fulfills itself where you see that he's stuck under a tree and he's never requited, he can't have his desires, just like Tantalus in Greek mythology. If you're familiar with the story where, okay, I'm going off on the sidetrack
No,
here.
go
Stop
ahead.
me if I need to. Well,
See?
Tantalus, he was punished because he stole the nectar from the gods, and he did some other crazy stuff like cutting up his son and making a dinner and serving it to the gods. He was just crazy. And
Wow.
so they punished him by sentencing him to the underworld in Tartarus, where he had to remain under a tree. The tree was in a lake, and the tree had fruit on it. And when he was hungry, and he'd reached up for the fruit, it would move out of his way. And when he was thirsty, he stooped down to get water, and the water would recede. So he never got water. He never got food. And I was, curious. I'd be curious if anyone who knows a lot about Marlon James to know why his thought processes in developing that character, and then why Homer is called Homer. Because right now I can't see it. I don't know. Homer is, he's a Greek, a bard, a poet, and he's kind of mysterious. People aren't really sure when he actually lived or what he actually wrote. So I'd be curious to know, h- why he named Homer Homer. So,
Mm.
although
Yeah.
there is mystery in her, but it is revealed. Okay, so that's the rest of my. I'm done with my sidetracking.
Wonderful.
Well, just
Thank you.
following up on something Gio said, Georgette, um, about it, is it really a free ride? I guess whether or not it's an opportunity is relative to, what your own interests, capacities, tolerances are. And so Circe, didn't have any interest in children. And so it's not that she just had to screw her way into a survival, but Lilith was given she's in that position because her primary role is to be Lilith's surrogate mom. But it sounds like it's a job she hated from day one. And so for her, it may not feel like it's been a free ride. Um, and I just also wanted to say, I posted something about the meaning of Lilith's name. Lilith is the main character in this story. And Lilith in religious history was the first wife of Adam. And so apparently Lilith wanted to have sex on top of Adam, just like he wanted to have sex on top of her. And, so they didn't get along very well. And he asked God to, offer the chick and get him somebody would be submissive to him. And this is where we get Eve. And so Lilith is the one that kind of went off in the world and became known as this evil character. But in current culture, she's this feminist, icon because she, she was trying to do her own thing from day one. So yeah, he put these names are not accidental at all. And that's another dimension that we miss in the story if we don't take the time to do the independent research around all of that. But yeah, these names are very intentional.
It's I think for me in terms of this question, I think she can start to feel like she has some power and that she's better than other people. She was very disappointed that, Master Jack tells her that Lilith has to go into the fields while he's in her bed, as if him being in her bed makes her special. So I wonder about the longevity of someone in her place, because things start to sag, and what then happens to somebody who has not been in the field and then are thrown into the field once they hit a certain age, with all the quotas and things like that. So it just seems like the hell that she's going through now, it's only going to end badly for her. There's not that it's going to end well for anybody, but she's got something to look forward to, that one, in my opinion. So the next question. Oh, this one, yeah. Question 4. We see Homer's back and that her breasts have been whipped off. We see this through Lilith's eyes, and the question arises, what did a slave do to get such a whipping? What comes to mind when you hear such questioning? And it was Lilith that was saying, what did Homer do to have her back whipped so badly and her breasts whipped off?
And yeah, I was thinking through that as a particular kind of gendered violence, because of course the breast is going to, in that way, belong to, a woman, an enslaved woman. So I also could not shake the notion of kind of like the profane and there's this kind of blurring here with Homer's body, that it is so captivating, almost like, art, that Lilith cannot look away, right?
Mm-hmm.
Interestingly for me, I think that's one of the problems that Black Lives Matter has called attention to, and it's as a global movement, that there's this tendency to know that violence has occurred and been exacted upon Black bodies, and that folks can look and then quickly look away. But I was thinking through, like, what is it about another young Black woman witnessing this moment of witnessing, that she cannot look away. And a lot of times, Black people cannot look away when we are seeing, regardless of where we are throughout the diaspora, but we are seeing, this kind of violence being, or the when we're seeing the marks, the hieroglyphics, as some scholars call it, that there's been some type of exceptional violence carried out on a Black body. So I took in the question that Lilith. I thought it was a beautiful, innocent, like a wonderful question. Like it was indicative of her experiences or the lack thereof, essentially, in that she has not yet seen what Homer has seen, right? She's not, I mean, there's a price for freedom, or there's a price for trying to have a sovereign body, or trying to make a stand that the person is, there's some sovereignty here. So I was just thinking through that, but just the notion that it's difficult to look quickly and then look away, and Lilith just proved that it's just really impossible for Black people witnessing that.
Thank you. Thank you, Nicole. Anybody else?
No, well, I'm thinking about the way, as Lilith was watching Homer wash herself in the sink with her dress off her shoulders and down at her waist, and Lilith made a couple of sounds, and she was worried that Homer might have heard her, but she didn't. But when another person started to enter the kitchen, Homer heard that, and she started trying to pull up her dress and was having a hard time doing it because her skin was wet and she was having a hard time doing it. But it's like I felt her shame, of being exposed like that, not just that her missing breasts were out in the open, but it felt like shame to me in not wanting anybody else to see the damage that's been done to you.
There's a piece that comes up for me about why Lilith looked at her like that. And I just couldn't help but think that, like, Lilith is 14 and she's had so little exposure to anything.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
even if Homer had a completely smooth back, like, she's never seen her whole experience in life up to, including up to this point, has been part of her. She's been dehumanized. And so therefore, not only has she been dehumanized, and so therefore she is in the act of not witnessing, but like treating as spectacle Homer, like dehumanizing Homer. But that is all that she knows. Like, this is the thing, is that it's very clear that, like, these are human beings. We're calling them that because we recognize them as such, but they don't recognize each other as such because their worldview is so narrow.
Well, I didn't necessarily see it as her dehumanizing Homer, because I'm thinking back on what Akasha Gloria T. Hull says, that when Black women are face to face, it's the most beautiful yet cruel mirror, because you know that obviously that could be your fate. Like, I think Lilith understands that this could be her fate. That could be her, Black body, especially after, obviously what she's done. I mean, you look at a deformed, mangled body, and essentially, if you douse someone with hot boiling liquid, right, then you have also been in the act of also the deforming of another person's body. But I thought it was intriguing that James is also playing around with this notion of Black childhoods or Black girlhoods, or this notion that Black children are always already denied a childhood, that they're always already denied an innocence. Because to start with, Lilith is never innocent. She's never innocent. She's not innocent at birth. She's done nothing but be born Black with green eyes. So she's never innocent. And I think James is, there's a way in which James calls attention to that this innocence is already, lost.
Yeah.
And she doesn't even have to do anything, for that innocence to be lost. But I definitely didn't see the dehumanization, though, Leonie. So I'm gonna go back and look at that again, because I thought that was a moment of kind of a clarity for her, like her gaining like a deeper knowledge that, that this could very well be, her. I mean, she's saying, but I wonder, I mean, and that's such a teen like responds like, well, what did she do to this? Not that no one deserves that, right? But that what did she do? It's always kind of like this, this line of thinking like there's cause and effect, but we know that there's a certain brutality and structural oppression and so forth and violence for Black people just because you're Black.
Yeah, thank you. I realized too, like I'm holding back on sharing something because I don't know what chapter it was in because I read the book again. So it's partly that could be feeding our different understandings, but it's really that's why it's so great to have the perspectives of everyone. So cool.
I guess thank you both. I think two things come up for me with that scene is I think Lilith questions why Homer is so regal when she looks like that naked. And I think there's a strength that Homer has, that she has been able to maintain her emotional well-being at the cost of her own flesh. And she somehow rises above it. And I don't think that Lilith at the tender age of 14 can understand that it's not being uppity. It's something else completely. And then I loved what Nicole said. I wish that was one of my questions. The ways that Black childhood is denied. And one of the things that came up was when Paris was trying to assault Lilith started talking about all the men that came through Cersei's bed. And she said that if a man came into the house and they already were physically ready to have sex or erection, Cersei would put them out. So here you have this little girl that understands, and it's not that Cersei has said this to her, she's witnessed it. So if that's not a childhood denied, I don't know what is. Well, all of slavery is childhood denied, but it's when you see these poignant minutes, seconds, conversations, you just keep it's drummed back into me that wow. So that somebody would knock on the door and they would already be, ready for sex. And then she would have to make herself scarce.
Right.
Let's move on to the next question. Unless somebody wanted to jump in with something. I'm looking at the time. I think we got a. Okay. So would somebody like to read question 5?
I'll read it.
Oh, thank you.
When Homer warns, quote, when Homer warns, he run away. Why the Johnny Jumpers saying parents run away when they know what happened? Why they lie when we and them not friends? Homer responds when puss catch bird. Think about that for a while, she says. Then Homer goes upstairs. What do you think Homer is saying and what she fears will happen next?
Anybody? So I think for me as a cat owner, my cat loves to taunt something. If he kills something, it is just the nastiest thing you ever have seen. That he wants this thing to stay alive as long as he can taunt it. And so when the Johnny Jumpers say to the master that this Paris has run away, they're not doing it for Lilith or Homer. But at some point, they're going to want their pound of flesh. And so Homer and Lilith are going to have to always have their watch their backs because something's coming. And and the other thing, the whole concept of the the Johnny Jumpers is very, and they exist. Those that role exists both in the Caribbean and in the States. That you found certain slaves and gave them a little bit of power, and they helped keep everybody else uh, as controlled as possible. But I just think those Johnny Jumpers, that little bit of power that they have, they are just as dangerous as the Master Jacks and stuff like that, because they will demand their blood from people's bodies too.
Yeah.
Right.
I also think that there is this deliberate suppression, right? Because you can't have a woman thinking at this time that she can avenge, or she has some kind of sovereignty over her own body, or some kind of control, that she can deny these men, especially when it's about enterprise and business and supposedly to enrich another, that she can deny them sex. So it's like a suppressing and shifting the narrative so that word does not get out. Because what might happen if more women decided, well, I'm going to fight back, especially, being in that. So just thinking in that regard, I'm thinking like that's a certain kind of suppression, shifting
From
of the
Lilith.
narrative, yes, and erasure. Because it's just like I'm thinking through like those acts of violence that are really to avenge a wrong. So like certain narratives that we don't necessarily hear that have been deliberately, suppressed. And so that's what I was thinking. It's like you can't start letting them feel that they could do that. They could fight off these kind of would-be assaulters, if you will. Um, so suppress it, but also the foreshadowing that vengeance is coming as a result of that she's going to have to pay for that killing. Um,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So from Homer's point of view, what do you think? Like, why would the Johnny Jumpers not? I think it's both. It's they have something over Homer, and they have
yeah,
something over Lilith.
right. And I think Homer, whatever it is, we're going to find out that's happened with Homer. She can certainly identify with what Lilith, the choice Lilith's made. I'm thinking I'm not that far yet. That could be a crazy prediction.
I just think when the Johnny Jumpers came, when the Johnny Jumpers came and Homer kicked them out of the kitchen,
Yeah,
and she exerted her power
a
as
power.
a
Yeah,
house slave.
yes,
I think that, and she's a woman.
right. So
I don't
it's
think that
to
sits well
perform an
with the Johnny
agency.
Jumpers.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they will wait until they can find some way to exact their violence onto Homer's body.
Hmm. Yeah, because Homer is necessarily. I mean, it's an alliance at this point. She is aligning. Did you all read it that way too? It's like, well, once you get in there with her, it's this in tandem. This is an alliance now. So, um,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, there's gonna be a shared fate.
Yeah.
But
Because
yeah, I get the feeling that they're not too pleased with her kind of performing this kind of agentive like self, this persona that she does have it, agency. So I do get that they're not happy about that either.
thank you. Okay, so question 6. Would someone like to read question 6?
Okay, I'll read it. The narrator's voice is rich and full of detail. How does the language sit with you in your life in 2019, given all the racism that the Trump White House is amplifying in America and throughout the world? It's like a scene from Twilight Zone. When you thought, well, after Obama, we're so far, and then Trump, we're like 2 seconds from being back in, on the plantation, for real, for real. That's how I feel. That's how I feel. Yeah.
Mhm.
For me, I just keep hearing I'm hearing or I'm reacting to this kind of language. I think, well, let me say it this way. I'm reacting to the economy of suffering embedded in the language. And so, and I think I'm reacting to that as I read, um, because I have just been dealing with death all summer, and it is like really making me reflect on what so many scholars have already argued, that we are just living, the afterlife of slavery. Like it just does not stop. It continues. It it continues. So I keep there are specific sentences and style and form that keep me entangled in what the author is telling us about, you that like this economy of suffering and what this means when I think through a futurity for Black people, right? It's just, it's surreal almost reading this. So
Yeah.
yeah, so it's really, yeah. After this one, I'm having to like take 10 minutes, stretch.
Yes. Yes.
I
Yeah.
guess what's happening with me in reading this book, it's a lot of what's happening in Africa, believe it or not. You just hear so I've never heard so many African countries all with different levels of genocide, you know, and it's not being reported, it's being underreported. And there was one country, I forget which one it is, where they were talking about, I think it was the Chinese, that were murdering Africans for their body parts.
Whoa.
And I have to, I can find where that is. And it's just like you're reading this and you're saying, I can't believe this is happening in this modern time. Like I somehow in my brain thinks that the bestiality and cruelty of the 18th century should not rear its head in this century with so much blood. And to read the book and then see that we are exactly in the same place. I think and then when you hear, Trump is doing away with food stamps and with this and that, and so if you are oppressed in this country, the only thing for you to do is be imprisoned or die, and so many other countries, nationalities are following suit. It was just like everybody was sitting in wait, saying, "Oh, now we can unleash our own cruelty." So I don't know. I just feel like Nicole was saying when I finish this book, and when I'm reading this book, I'm like, okay, nobody bother me. Nobody, nobody give me no bad news because I want to get through this beautiful, beautiful book. So yeah, I'll stop there.
Yeah.
I
Well,
did
that
warn you
that
all.
that question.
I'm sorry.
I said I did warn you. It's relentlessly violent.
And we're only up to chapter 2.
I know. I'm not surprised to hear it. There's.
Yeah, well, I mean, I hear what Leonie is saying about the differences in the types of slavery, but I've never read anything about American slavery that struck me as tender or gentle or kind or anything less than completely brutal. But the question and the comments going on are making me think about, this current language going on with Trump and the squad and go back where you came from, you know, as, as if the people of color that are here, are just here as any other immigrant and and don't have, as much entitlement as anybody to be here. That we should somehow in this day and age be afraid to speak our truths. And, thinking about the question of what Homer could have possibly done to get those whips. I mean, the simple matter is, as Nicole said, just being Black. But I would just say, some of anything, recklessly eyeballing, you know, walking with your shoulders back, failing to jump off the sidewalk. A million things could go on in a day that could lead to that kind of punishment. And so with the language in the current political scene, it feels like that's the undertone, the underlying message that, you don't have a right to speak in this platform with us white men, and women. And don't you know your place?
That's right. That's right. When you're talking, you're reminding me of Sandra Bland. That's the same thing that Lilith and Sandra could have been as simple as her. There's no conflict resolution. You know what I'm saying? So she could have.
Why are you stopping me? Right.
She could have just said one thing to ask a question twice that somebody felt was the new disrespect or wanting to live.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
some bodily function that she couldn't control. Anything.
Yeah.
Okay, so we end this session at 7:30 or 8 o'clock.
7:30.
7:30. So, do we want to do one last question and then stop, or should we stop and start to wind down right now?
Well, let's try to get in one more. I just want to take a couple of minutes at the end to finalize the session 12 schedule.
Alrighty. So if you look at the last 3 questions, is there one that somebody would like to answer? Read and answer? Anything that resonates with anybody?
So I like the question at number 7 about Lilith's spiritedness. And it just makes me think about, I've always loved Alice Walker's definition of womanism. And, she talks about the womanist has to love the spirit. But I love him how you said there's a Lilith spirit in us too. So how do you present your own darker light power? And today I'm just I thought this is just a beautiful question and something that's just felt very practical for me to reflect on how today I'm just, walking away from things and spaces and stuff that's, not for me. I think I'm exhibiting that power by trusting myself so much more, my intuition, my discernment, to just walk away from the table. I'm trying to think of where that quote comes from. I've seen it floating around. But anyway, when love and respect is not being served, I'm up and I'm out. So,
Yeah,
so I just love that.
I like that.
You too, eh, Nicole? Yeah, it's so interesting because I'm transitioning out of my job to take on doing my business full time, and that was the thing. When I said Europe was rough, it was rough because in order to be considered, I had to erase my needs. And I came back from Europe and I just said, no more. I just said, especially I just said, erasure is just like not a thing I'm interested in doing anymore. And that I will not work with anybody who will not at least acknowledge that that structural power exists. I just will refuse to do it. So yeah, I guess it's my inner Lilith that came out. But it was just, I think I've shared it with you guys before that, like, yeah, I shared with you before. There's something about that. Something in me is changing as I learn more and more about where it is that I come from and tap into ancestry and walk towards healing, in which I just am not willing to stretch anymore in the ways that we are expected to stretch in order to pay our rent, buy food, keep a job. I actually cannot tolerate it anymore. It doesn't feel like choice. Um, it feels like something else, something old. Yeah.
Yeah, I when I lived in where did I live? In Maryland. Um, I met this white couple, and they had a private language between them, NLU and LU. So NLU are people that are not like us, and LU are people that are like us. So I was telling my one of my girlfriends, Leah, about it. And so she and I came up with our own private language, which is PLU and PULU, because we wanted to have a vowel in there so that we could just start using them as words. So PLU, plu, are people like us, Leonie, and PULU, we call pulus, people unlike us. so, we're constantly moving through the world pointing out, see? And our belief is that most people fall in this Pulu, people unlike us category, this category of people who are willing and able to just kind of accept the status quo and go along with the program and wittingly or unwittingly help to perpetuate, the way things are. And then there's this minority of people who kind of, struggle to survive because people like us just can't get right in our spirit going along with the program. And so we're constantly being punished. We're constantly being whipped and beaten and paying the consequences of, just wanting to have all of the rights and entitlements that any other human being on earth should have. So, welcome to the club. It's a lonely club, Leonie, but I'm a girl.
Gio, you want to add anything?
Oh, oh, I got light and dark going on. You don't want to see that dark one come out. I try to keep it under control. I need to stay out of jail. No.
That is a good goal.
Yeah, yes, yeah. I don't think I could hang like my mom did. Things have changed. Orange is not the new black. Okay, it's not. It's really not.
Oh man.
Uh,
Well,
Yeah.
thank you, everybody. I think that is the questions for tonight. This was a great session. I want to really thank Michelle and Nicole. I got the weeks mixed up, and they were both so gracious in making sure that we kept it moving without a hitch. So thank you both.
Oh.
thank you. Thank you. Very thought-provoking questions. Very
Yeah.
creative. That's one of your strengths.
Can I give you a quick poem before we get into that? If does anybody have, it's a minute long.
Sure.
And this is
Okay.
it's a poem that I'm submitting based on the book Beloved. And I don't know if you remember in Beloved there was Baby Shug, who was the minister that got all the slaves together on Sunday just so that they could kind of be together and be normal with their children while they weren't being working. And this poem is for Baby Shugs. And here it goes. There was a before and now here there is only right here. I was somebody once. Always before I know it, a strong feeling so strong come on me, like they're gonna call me by name and I'm gonna whip around and I'm gonna remember, I'm gonna see them, remembering me, remembering a place, remembering a time, remembering a smell, a full stomach, a soft mat on the floor. I'm going to remember all that came in before being stolen, before being ripped apart, left for dead. So when Baby Snugs says for us women to weep, I was already weeping, low like, deeper than all that wailing, that mourning. I wish somebody, somehow, she says, for us women to laugh, laugh loud, laugh until my belly shook like blueberry jam. See, because I got this feeling that laughter might sound like my name. And if I heard my name, maybe I would remember the before, who I belonged to once when I belonged to a mama or a somebody or a somebody or a somebody special. That's the poem.
Wow. Thank
Thank
Nice.
you.
We have our own resident poet. Thank
Yeah.
you, Kim.
Thank you.
Oh, that's beautiful, Kim. So beautiful.
Oh, thank you
Feel
all.
feel free to post it on the Global Black Feminist page, but the website is up and operative now, right?
Yes.
Kim?
Yes, it needs a
So
little love. It needs a little, it's better than when I told y'all about it last time. So it's slow
okay,
going.
so
I'll send the
can
new
people
link. So the first page
can
looks
people
good.
can people find that particular poem on your webpage?
No, you gotta buy my poems.
Oh, okay.
Kim, like I got a business to run here.
My dark light power is my voice, but I gotta eat. No, but I should have a book coming out soon.
Oh,
Okay.
cool.
Good. Good. Um, So, okay, so yeah, there was a slight segueing to group business and finalizing the session 12 schedule. There was a change in tonight's facilitator, as Kim already mentioned. So, Nicole, you're clear about doing next week chapters 3 to 5. And then Nicole is also on for the following week, 6 to 8. So I think everything, is pretty much set on version 2 of the schedule. My only question marks were around Vanita, who I had penciled in because she was, kind of playing around with whether or not she felt up to joining us for this book. She's, reading along with us.
I'm sorry, Michelle. Did we want to stay on air to discuss this, or did we want to? I didn't know if you wanted to close out the live.
No, I want to stay on there. I'm done.
Okay. Okay.
If you guys agree with my suggestion, and my suggestion is just that we take the 2 weeks where I had penciled Vanita in. That's September 10th and October 8th, and just have those be freestyle days, where everybody comes here to highlight a particular passage and just, we go from there. Is that all right?
You have my vote.
Yes. Yeah. That's fine.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Could you give me those dates again? I'm sorry. September 10th and
October 8th.
October 8th. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I didn't hear back from the one woman that said she wanted to join the group, and the other person I lost contact with. So I don't have anybody new, but if the one gets back to us, I'll let you know.
Okay. Okay.
Sounds good.
So I am done. Nicole, is there something you wanted us to hang back to talk about?
Well, I just needed to let you all know. I don't know yet, and my numbers are low, but you all know I teach an evening class. And so initially, I was supposed to have this class starting in October, and which I don't know what's happening because when I checked again, it looks like it's been moved to August. It's going to be the end of August, but again, sometimes it doesn't make, because remember the last time I had one, it didn't make. The enrollment looks quite low so far, so I don't think it'll make. So I just wanted to give you the heads up. I don't know what's happening, and the class will be, my time, 6 to 8 p.m. Tuesday, Thursday. So that could potentially, just be a little problematic for me joining in discussion. But I will, as soon as, of course, as I know for sure, then I will communicate to the group. But the class wouldn't start until the very end of August anyway. So for now, a month, and I'm just monitoring to see if enrollment will pick up. But so far, it looks like it's probably not going to make. I'm almost like 75% sure it's probably not going to make.
Okay.
I'm
All
sorry.
right, well,
Yeah, I have to go now, but it was good to see you all.
Good
Bye,
to see you
Bye,
too,
Leonie.
Leonie.
Good to see you. Y'all have a good evening.
Bye. Love you,
Bye.
new Leonie.
Thank you.
I think we should just go ahead and close. And thank you, everybody. And we will see you in the same place next week, reading our story together.
All
Bye.
right.
Bye, everybody.
Good night.
Bye, y'all.
Good night.